Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first story is titled, Kick the main boss of the company out of your bar at a company drinks. Okay, it happened to my dad. He was one of the 3 partners at one of his former companies, about medium-sized. One day, he and his company went to a company drinks. I don't think it was exactly a company party, but it was more than an after-work drink at the pub. Anyway, the bar was serving aperitifs, and my dad asked for his without ice, as he hates ice tainting his drink. The landlord, who was behind the bar, refused, and said the ice was mandatory. So he served my dad's with ice. Dad accepted it, took the ice out, and laid it on the drain rack that goes under the beer drafts. The landlord ordered him to leave. My dad was half expecting it, but asked him to repeat himself. The landlord once again told him to leave. My dad said, okay, and started to leave. And his company all started to file out after him. The landlord protested, no, you don't all have to leave. Only he has to leave. One of the other staffers said something along the lines of, sorry mate. He's the big boss. We all go where he goes. So they all left and went to another bar. They had made a reservation at the bar they were leaving, but they hadn't put down any deposit for it, and hadn't bought any drinks yet. The aperitifs had been complimentary, so the landlord didn't even get paid for those. The next story is titled, You Want Your Fries Now? Okay. I work at a French fry stand during my free time to earn some extra money. Last week, we had this customer that was really impatient. There was an old lady who paid before her. She wanted her fries to be first. I said, sorry, can't do that. She said she's going to be late for something. As I cook her fries, she asked me how much time does she have to wait to cook. I said 6 minutes. Only 2 minutes in, she asked me again. And at 3 minutes she wanted the fries. I told her that it's not yet cooked and is still cold inside. She said she didn't care. I told her to give me the money first. She gave the money, I gave the fries still cold inside. She took a couple of fries and ate them at the same time. She spat the fries into the little paper bag the fries come with. She wanted a refund. I said, sorry, can't do that. The next story is titled, I'm paid by the hour. One day working at a convenience store, I had a line begin to form at the register I was working at. The customer I was trying to help was someone who was so bored, they figured they'd try to piss me off by wasting my time. He started asking basic questions about products behind the counter, then proceeded to draw the conversation out meaninglessly. After it became apparent I had no response or didn't know the answer, he picked a different product and started over. I suppose he wanted me to reflect on my job and show him how miserable he thought I should be to be making minimum wage and dealing with a guy who wasn't trying to hide the fact that he was trying to piss me off. I dealt with similar people in retail by this point and was pretty good at dealing with them. I continued to politely answer his questions and be as patient and friendly as possible as a line started to form behind him. After some time, he started to realize I wasn't getting pissed off and he started to get annoyed by it. He started being even more annoying in the same fashion. There was now a line of people behind him, watching this happen. I decided not to inform him that people were behind him. Eventually, he asked me something along the lines of, am I not pissing you off, except not that direct, but that's still essentially what he was asking me. And that was when I delivered one of my favorite comebacks I had the fortune of handing out during the time I worked in retail. Sir, I'm getting paid by the hour. The people behind you aren't though. He proceeded to glance behind him and was met with multiple pairs of pissed-off eyes. A few of them even laughed at my comment. Annoying guy immediately left in embarrassment. The next story is titled, You Want to Speak to My Manager Instead if Me? Sure. Prior to being a bartender I worked at a retail chain called Big W. I'm a nerd. I tend to switch to autopilot when tired, almost always at the end of shifts, and can be a dick when annoyed. Me in a nutshell. It's a slow Wednesday afternoon, the AC is broken again and it's about 5 degrees Celsius hotter inside than it is outside, 29 C. I'm in autopilot, rigor mortis smile on my face and retail greetings are droning out of my throat. A guy walks into my register, demanding a refund for something trivial. Probably his panties were the wrong color, I don't remember. I inform him in a monotone voice that refunds are issued by my supervisor, not me. There's a surprisingly substantial line at the supervisor's desk, people wanting cigarettes, refunds or information. He informs me that he's not waiting that long for something trivial. He demands I do it, because even someone as dumb as you can do this. Well, that snapped me out of autopilot and the smile fades. I repeat, in a much more direct tone, that only the supervisor can do refunds. The customer is having none of it. Refund my item. He demands again, saying it very slowly as if I was the dumbest potato in the strawberry patch. I am unable to, he cuts me off. I want to speak to your manager, I don't want to talk to you. Now this is where people need to be careful with their words. As a cashier, I report directly to my supervisor, one of the two at the desk. They're in charge of me. My manager sits out back managing the store, and usually never has to interact with customers unless the supervisor calls him. So I nod, calling through the headset for my manager. Let's call him Fred. Fred's a great guy, he tells good jokes, he's always ready to help his friends and he's a caring soul. He's also a mute, and after wrapping his ute around a tree as a teen, he's also deaf. As such, he knows Auslan, Australian Sign Language, but can't read lips to save his life. I also can't speak Auslan at all. This probably took about 5 minutes for someone to alert Fred that he was needed and for him to come down. All this time I'm smiling but not saying a word to the gentleman, as he told me to. He comes up to the registers, sees it's me waving him down and pulls out his PDA to communicate with me. What's up? Fred types. I take the PDA and type, customer has a complaint, wants to speak to my manager, not me. Fred raises an eyebrow at me and I just shrug. The guy is turning red with anger, probably thinking we're ignoring him. Fred turns to the guy who launches into a full-on verbal assault that would curdle milkshokoloate. Something about incompetent employees and terrible service. Fred just stands there. Eventually the guy runs out of breath and Fred has a chance to show him the PDA with the words, "Sir, I am a deaf mute, please use this to communicate with me." The guy practically screams and storms out of the store. The next story is titled, Overtime Ban? Alright, I guess I'd better lock up now. This is an old story from back when I used to work in the opticians department of a major supermarket chain. I was a part-timer, working 9 hours per week, 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Saturdays, and 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Sundays. Part of my job was to close down the department on both days, because none of the managers liked being around at closing time. The department closed at 9 p.m. on Saturdays, but it was often about 9:20 that I actually left. Closing down a department takes time, mostly because you can't do it when customers are browsing. Unsurprisingly, I consistently worked more hours than I was supposed to. All store employees were on the clock, and for some reason the store took readings down to the second. You were paid an hourly rate to within a few seconds of how long you were clocked in for. My manager, I'll call her Val, because that was her name, called a meeting at 3 p.m. on a Saturday, which coincidentally was the time I was scheduled to start work. Everyone in the department was either starting or finishing their shifts within a couple of hours of then, so it was a logical time, but that was about the only logical thing about it. The thrust of the meeting was that some people, she said, looking directly at me down the length of her not inconsiderable nose, were claiming more than their allotted hours, and that this must stop. Henceforth, all overtime must be approved in writing. This was entirely her decision. Other departments didn't have this problem as long as you weren't taking the mick. Fast forward to about 8:45 p.m. Val and I were the only employees left in the department. She started to gather her things, as is her way. And I started the process of putting our more expensive frames into their night display cases, where they could safely be locked away when the department was closed. Val, what on earth are you doing? There shall be wings. Me, I'm locking up. I have to make sure I don't go over my hours today. Val, this department has to be open until 9 p.m. It's in the store handbook. You can't lock up right now, my boss will be furious. Me, you know from experience that it takes a good 10 minutes, I lied, it's actually more like 20, to lock up. I'm not allowed to be on the premises after I clock out. I have to start locking up, otherwise I'll be disciplined. I reached for the tannoy and my voice saying, "Good evening. Would Mrs. Locke please come to the optical department?" Mrs. Locke to the optical department. "Thank you," resonated through the store, code for "security, bring the keys, we're locking up." Val goes white as a sheet. The first cracks in her cake on makeup began to show. I could see the look on her snooty face as a very large penny began to drop. She yelled, "Wait here," while leaving the department with a purposeful stride. By the time she'd returned, I'd explained to the security guard what's happening. He agreed to play along. We start slowly, locking down the spectacle frames. Val, with sweat starting to show on her brow, wordlessly handed me a hastily scribbled note authorizing 30 minutes of overtime. I showed it to the security guard, who nodded. Val left without a word, looking really flustered, just as a customer walked in. My friend from security unlocked the frames again and I went to serve. The following day, Val's usual snooty demeanor had changed. She didn't look contrite, but there were definitely a few cracks in her expression. She took me to one side, and without preamble, handed me a new rota, and launched into what was clearly a well-rehearsed speech. "Val, there shall be wings. I have approved your request to extend your hours to 10 hours a week. I now expect you to work from 3 p.m. until 9:30 p.m. on Saturdays, and from 1 p.m. until 4:30 p.m. on Sundays. I trust that this will not be a problem." Me, "Oh, that's fine, thank you, Val. Val, and henceforth, if you should happen to work slightly over your hours, do not be overly concerned about it." The next story is titled, "You Want Me to Stop Doing Your Job for You?" Sounds great. Background: I work as a front office manager in a client-facing position. My primary role is to register clients, do paperwork, and solve any issues related to this. My office is right at the front, so when clients walk in, I used to go greet them, direct them to their location for the day, and give them the rules, etc. I have a fellow manager, who also works directly with clients. But he's a lazy, useless employee, and though technically doing greetings and introductions is his job, I did it for him, because he often couldn't be bothered to walk 100 yards to do his job properly. So here we are. It's a busy day. I'm running between welcoming clients, registering them, and sending them off, multiple different parties at a time. There's lots of people around, one of me, and I'm still working with a 10-minute maximum turnaround time, which for my role is very impressive. I've got these people in and out as fast as possible, while also doing someone else's job for them. The other manager is nowhere to be seen until the very end of the day, when he marches into my office. "What the duck are you doing? Why are you greeting clients?" And so on and so forth. For a solid 10 minutes. He even goes so far as to imply that because I'm a woman, my only role should be doing the paperwork while he does the real man's work. I'm so unbelievably pissed at this. I basically ran our operation the whole day while he ducked off somewhere, God only knows where, and he now has the nerve to scream at me. He finishes with a "Don't ever do that again." First, he doesn't have any authority over me. We're of equal rank, with different roles. There was one other manager in the office with me going over paperwork, and he was so shocked he couldn't even retaliate. I'm 2 seconds away from taking this a hole's head off. Okay, I won't. I then march out, because things would have gone very poorly if I had stayed. Cue the next day. A whole manager comes up to me and tries to apologize, while also 100% not really apologizing at all. He repeats much of the same crap said the day before, and still seems to not recognize the fatal flaw in his plan of screaming at me for doing his job, which is that now he's gonna have to actually work. I nod, smile, and duck right off to my office. Which I proceed to not leave for the next 8 hours. I do exactly what my job is. I register clients. I do paperwork. That is it. I can see clients walking into the building, confused, obviously needing help, or expecting a greeting. But hey, that's not my job. A whole manager, after his half-assed apology, had disappeared again, so I call him down. "You've got clients waiting," I tell him. He gets there, late, and has a horde of angry clients waiting for him to actually do his job. There's so many of them because he's late that it's now his turn to spend the next 6 hours running around like a chicken with his head cut off, while I have a great time leisurely doing my job exactly to the limits of the description, nothing more. By the end of the day, I'm feeling great, the clients are happy with my work, but the complaints are rolling in for him. He comes in at the end of the day again, obviously ready to yell. I had a great day. So much easier to get everything done when I'm not doing someone else's work for them, I tell him. By the way, I had time to process the customer requests for the week since I wasn't busy greeting. Here's your complaints. And I proceed to hand him a very thick stack of complaints concerning turnaround time, confusing directions, lack of space, and so on. Everything relating to his role. Have a nice night. And I leave. Haven't done his job for him since, and he hasn't gotten any better at it. It only gets funnier every time. The next story is titled, My Dad's Girlfriend Has a Wrist Tattoo. My dad's ex-girlfriend had a wrist tattoo and recently got a job. She was told to cover up the tattoo because it violates God's image of a woman. She tried covering it up with makeup, but they said that the different tone of the makeup made it more obvious. They told her that she had to find a way to cover up the tattoo cleanly or she would be fired. Keep in mind she works in a building where she is never seen by the customers. She just answers phone calls and writes messages for people. So she tried putting a bandage on it. They said that made the area look like she had tried to slit her wrists and told her to find another way. So finally she comes to me with this problem. I'm very petty. And all for taking things literally. So I ask her, do you have any bracelets you could wear to cover it up? She brings out this box full of the noisiest metal bracelets I've ever seen. So the next day she goes to work and both of her wrists are covered in these bracelets. You can hear her coming from a mile away. Her boss told her she could expose the tattoo. The next story is titled, You Want to Time Every Ticket I Do with a Person Shadowing Me. Okay. Back in 2007 I worked for a large bank that is based in Atlanta and I worked in Richmond in a 28-story office tower. My primary job was desktop support and fixing phones. At that time I was very athletic, I moved fast all the time and hated to use the elevator. If I had to go less than 6 floors, I took the stairs. My boss didn't care for as a team we were the most efficient team in the company as far as hash of tickets worked each week per tech. We worked smart, not hard. So upper management in Atlanta decides one day to do a deep assessment on how all the techs in the bank did our job. My team gets a visit from Atlanta one day in the form of a heavy-set guy who says he will be shadowing us to see how we did our job. He was a bit of an condescending jerk too in his attitude. He even had a stopwatch to time us. Now we all knew right away what was happening. Management wanted to outsource us, so they needed to know what we did, how long it took and what we used so they could put a cost on it before soliciting for bids. Let's just say my team was not thrilled about it. Now I decided to be a smart ass about this and my team knew what I had planned for this event. I was told this overweight condescending jerk was to shadow us and time us. Okay, he is going to have to keep up. Time for malicious compliance. I only used the stairs. Our lab was on the 20th floor. A typical morning for me would be like this. I'd run a desktop monitor ticket to the 6th floor, then go back to 20 to get my phone bag to go to lower level 1 to the IPX to hook up a phone, then go to the 14th floor to test the phone, then up to 22 to fix a printer, then down to 7 to look at a laptop. Today, I'm only doing the stairs, so this guy was about to have a heart attack trying to keep up with me while I did my job. I took no pity on him and didn't even pay attention to him. As far as I was concerned, this jerk was assisting others in having my job eliminated. At some point I'd lost him in the stairwell. Later my boss says to me the guy was a bit mad for me taking the stairs, but my boss told him that is how my tech works and he is one of my best. If you can't keep up, that is your problem. To this day I have said she was the best boss I've ever had. Later I find out what I did got back to upper management in Atlanta. They were pissed, yet they could not punish me for I was doing my job and did it very well. The story also got around to other techs and they thought it was funny as hell what I did. In April 2008 we found out we were outsourced. Just like we knew it was going to happen. I no longer work there. The next story is titled, Want to be called by your formal name? No problem, however, you must do the same. Years ago, I was working for a university as a secretary for a rather large department. I was told by the chair to call everyone by their first name rather than the formal Dr. So-and-so. I complied and life went on with me using informal names and them doing the same for me. However, about a year later, I called to Dr. So-and-so in the next room to ask a question. It was benign enough and still respectful using his first name. Not long after, I received an email. He addressed it to Risili and stated that I needed to call him Dr. So-and-so and not to use his first name. I knew this was a way to establish his superiority over me, but I would not have it. I may have been the secretary, but I was still a human being who deserved respect too. Here is where the malicious compliance came into play. I wrote him an email back addressing him as Dr. So-and-so. I agreed to call him by his formal name, but I insisted that he do the same to me. I am no longer Risley but Mrs. Doe. I copied the department chair and executive aide so all were in the loop. He went to the chair to complain, but she sided with me. And so it began. From then on out, it was Dr. So-and-so on every correspondence, and when I spoke to him, if he addressed me as Risley, I would remind him that I wanted to be addressed as Mrs. Doe and would not answer until he addressed me as such. This really got on his nerve. He did not want to be the only one to call me by the formal, as it messed with his need for superiority over a peon. It only took less than a week before he wrote me again. This time, it was to say to please call him Paul instead of Dr. So-and-so. No apology to me, just a resounding white flag surrender. I took it as a small win for the peons and proceeded to call him Paul. I worked in that department for 8 years and we never had another problem like this. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and post some bear emojis in the comments.